Are you ready to face your biggest fear? Subscribe, like, and grab a cup of coffee as we dive deep into a terrifying yet enlightening near-death experience.
I heard the click of the freezer door, and then I heard the thud of the garage door, and I heard silence. She opened up the freezer door, and my little body was in there. When I opened my eyes, I also saw spirits. They were everywhere. They were looking in my window, under my bed, in the corner of the room, down the hallway. We are the pavers, you are not. You think you know what's best for you. We know what's best for you. What you try to control controls you, and what you run from chases you. Hi everyone, I'm Susan Groff. I am an evidential medium, a grief and addiction therapist. I am an author of the book Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, Wisdom from the Spirit World on Living, Dying, and the In-Between, published by Hay House. And I am a intuitive reader. So just to give you a little idea of how I became a medium, I was a little girl. I was almost 5 years old, and I was playing fort with some boys, and they wanted to know if I wanted to continue playing, and I did. And they said if I got up in the freezer in the garage, that I would be able to play fort with them. And I got up in the freezer in the garage. It wasn't plugged in, but I was still calling out flavors and so excited. And I wanted to play fort so bad. And unfortunately, I heard the click of the freezer door. And I heard them running around and laughing and giggling, and I was stuck in that freezer. I thought I was in on a game, but I had trepidation, obviously. But I still thought they were going to open the freezer door and let me out. And then I heard the thud of the garage door, and I heard silence. I was terrified. I knew innately that I was in big trouble, real trouble. I actually had the feeling that I was going to leave the planet, and my fear of, life and death or whatever that was that kicked in, it was in. And I started screaming at the top of my lungs. And my mother heard screaming. She thought it was the cats on the land in heat. And so you can imagine how high-pitched the sound must have been if you've ever heard that. And that is the sound of terror. It's a very high-pitched guttural sound. And I kept screaming and screaming, but nobody came. And it was a little while, and before I knew it, I looked to my left and I saw lights come in. There were 3 lights, and I remember one of the lights said, "Stop screaming." And I didn't listen. I kept screaming. And then another light, pretty powerful, said, "Stop screaming, Susie, we're going to get your mommy." But first is what I kind of felt, and boom, I was at the bottom of a stairwell. And I was looking up the stairwell. Now, I'm going to explain this as an adult woman, not as a child, so that you understand it and I can make sense of it. But as a child, I didn't understand 3/4 of what I'm going to tell you. So I want to be very clear. Now, there are no words for a near-death experience. There just aren't. But I'm going to do my best with that too. So there I was at the bottom of a stairway, and it was infinite, the stairs, and they were cracked and broken and old, really old. And I saw this room, and it was like a Greco-Roman room, and it had pillars, and it was beautiful, and it had an open ceiling, and I just knew there was an open floor. And I wanted to get to that, and I thought, how am I going to get to that? I knew it was there, and I was there. And I was standing at the edge of this well, and I was watching movement inside the well, and it was like DNA moving, twisting and turning. And it was words, and I saw the words, but I couldn't read, at least not very well. Mom and Pop, Dr. Seuss, that's what I could read. And I remember hearing in some weird way, like in my head, these stories that people were saying. And it felt like one consciousness. And I heard, my mom's got cancer. Please God, don't let her die. And I heard, I'm going to turn 16 and my dad won't get me a car. Please God, make her get me a car, or make him get me a car. When I was hearing all kinds of just interesting prayers, desires. And I looked over at the angelic realm and I asked them, do you answer all those? And they said, oh no, Susie. Sometimes what people desire the most isn't good for them. I didn't really like hearing that. But I was so mesmerized by where I was and what I was looking at. It was a beautiful room, filled with just this love that I can't describe. And then I looked ahead of me and I saw this road, and I called it the Yellow Brick Road because I had seen The Wizard of Oz. And it was this beautiful golden road made of pavers. And I saw pyramids at the beginning of the road. And I watched these angelic beings standing there or floating there or whatever they were doing. And I watched humans come in and start pulling from the bottom of these pyramids, and they were starting to pave their path with them. And I could see the pyramid rocking. And I don't know if I innately knew, but I feel like I did, that that was their life, that they were taking their life journey, their life balance. And it was completely out of balance. And they were trying to pave their path. And then I watched them drop to their knees and say, for the love of God, please help me. I don't know what's wrong with me. Nothing's working out. And keep in mind that in the spirit realm, at least for the children that I work with, we see things as, in NDE's film, metaphorical. Everything is metaphorical because the child doesn't understand as clearly as an adult would. So, they were saying, please help me. And I watched these beautiful angels come in, and they started removing the pavers and putting them to the bottom of the pyramid and rebalancing the pyramid. And they went to the top and they pulled a paver and it would recreate itself. Today, I know what that means. That means we have many choices and many doors and many journeys. But I didn't understand that then. And I watched them start paving the path. And I said, what are you doing? And they said, we are the pavers, you are not. All you have to do is walk it. And I asked, how do you know if you're walking it right? And I'm imagining that they probably put these questions in my head. And again, this is all telepathy. It's not with our mouths. We're not speaking the way that a human speaks. And they said, we bless and block everything. Make no mistake. You can get through a block battered and bruised at best, or you can shift. And if you see another block or wall, shift again. And if you see another wall, shift again. And before you know it, you'll see us paving your path. You think you know what's best for you. We know what's best for you. What you try to control controls you, and what you run from chases you. Now, I had no idea how profound that was, but being an older person, I do now. I spent my whole life trying to control everything around me, and it just controlled me. All I could do was think about it and worry about it. But now I understand. The next thing I remember was shifting into another, I call it room, but it wasn't a room. These are places. And I shifted into these rooms, and this room, I watched humans standing together as family. And there were virtual books coming at them, or pamphlets, or I didn't know what virtual was at the time, but I say that virtual now because they were moving. And I watched them come in front of them, and these families were deciding what they were going to do. And I was hearing them say, I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to go through that, and I'm going to have this happen and that happen, and my soul's going to grow and expand so much, and I was just seeing this interaction going on. And I heard this guide, I believe, or angelic being, say to them, oh no, that's too much. That's way too much. I call that today the PhD in hardship, which I know I chose. And I'll explain that during this. That's too much. You don't want to do all that. And they said, I can do it. I know I can. I just know I can. And they said, well, you do have free will. And they were gone. And then another family, all these people were stepping in. And I asked them, where did they go? And they said they went to their next incarnation. And I said, where am I? And they said, you're in the room of knowledge. I believe that's the Akashic Records, but to me, it's the room of knowledge. And I didn't hear that word Akashic Records till probably 15 years ago. So just so you know, I didn't even know what it was, but I think that's what they're trying to describe. And I remember thinking, who are these people and what's happening here? And they explained what free will was to me, and I didn't understand. And they explained it by talking about doors, because I understand doors. And they said you will have doors, and behind those doors are choices. And depending upon which choice you make in your free will decide the lesson you're meant to learn. You make a contract for that lesson. So how I view it, and this comes from me, how I view it is my soul might want to resonate in the understanding of marriage. So I will be married. I might be 98, but I'll be married. Who I marry, how long I'm married, the kind of marriage I have will all be free will. And that helps my soul expand and grow. So I might open one door and go, not marrying this guy, and close that door and go to the next one. Or I might marry that guy and learn valuable lessons. So every door has lessons behind it. Some are smoother and easier than others. I think I opened all the hard doors. But anyway, that's what they explained to me. Now, people ask me, how do you remember this so clearly? And I ask them, have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz when you were a child? And they say, yes. And I go, do you remember the Tin Man? Yes. Do you remember the lion? Yes. Do you remember that he needed courage? Oh, yeah. You remember the ruby slippers? Yes. Anything that has a profound impact on you, think about it. When you go back in life and think about your childhood, anything that had a profound impact on you, you remember. And usually you remember pretty good detail. And that was me. And I was meant to remember. The next thing I remember was being in a room of companions. And it was our animals. And I wasn't afraid, which is so interesting, because I saw all kinds of animals that we might consider here to be frightening. And they weren't. And I remember just feeling this sense of, oh my gosh, I'm with the babies, I'm with the animals, and I loved animals. I was a very empathic child. Even before this happened, I remember when an animal would pass, I would see it float, and that was just normal. I didn't think anything. So I was in love with animals, and I hadn't lost a loved animal. I lost animals on land, but not a loved animal at that point in my journey. So I didn't see one of my loved animals, but I know they were there. And I watched them romping and playing in this field. And I remember, of course, I asked them, where am I? And they said, you're in the room of companions. And again, they describe room because a child wouldn't understand a metaphor of that. So room was easy, but it really is a place. And it's beautiful. And I was sitting on some beautiful grass, and I could see the green grass just go on forever and ever. And there were daisies, what I would call daisies, and there were flowers. The colors of the flowers and the beauty of the flowers was not even anything I had ever seen in my life. The closest I can get to it is I went to the Garden of Eden in Maui, and the flowers that were there, I was just in a dream, because it was like being back there in some way, some of the flowers, but really they were just unbelievably beautiful, and they went on forever. And the colors are like the most vibrant of color you could imagine. Nothing like we have here. Everything is dulled down, but everything, even the blades of grass, pulsate. Everything is live on the other side. It's phenomenal. And I remember seeing animals, and a dog came up to me. It was a very large dog. And I always wonder if it was a wolf or something, because I was seeing all those animals. There wasn't an animal that I couldn't see if I wanted to. And I have a propensity for wolves. I'm very attached to them. I love to go watch them and help them and see them. So I don't know if it was, but anyway, it was sitting beside me, and I just felt this safety, complete safety. And I know I was little and small. And this is not easy for me. I was sitting there, and I looked to my left, and I saw what I would call a mountain. And I saw this being, this beautiful, amazing being on this mountain, like nothing I had ever felt. And I wanted to get up that mountain so bad, and I couldn't. And I remember feeling like I just want to get there. I just want to be there. And then I felt this beautiful light ray come off of this beam, and it was pure love. I felt pure love. I was everything, and I was nothing. I was perfect and imperfect and everything else. I was just everything, and I was nothing. I've never felt that kind of love since. I've always looked for love like that, where it was completely unconditional and so intense that you just want it so bad. And all I ever wanted in my life was, I wanted people to love me, because, I do anything they want, just love me, because I wanted to recreate that, but I didn't know how. I remember looking at these beautiful, beautiful stones, I'm going to call them. And I was looking to my right, and I saw this beautiful, I call it my my light angel, coming out of this stone building and coming towards me. And she was explaining things to me, why I'm seeing the things I'm seeing, and what it will mean for me in my life journey, and telling me, that I had felt the ultimate love. And today I understand that our job here is to have that love. It's not easy. It's the hardest thing I do, especially with myself. And I'm sure you all can relate to that. But love is the hierarchy, even there. Love is the answer to everything. And it is the more you love, the higher you vibrate. And the goal is to get to that vibration level of source. That's why I know we come back. And when I was in the room of knowledge, when they told me that they went to their new incarnation, I didn't know what they meant. I had no clue. And later on in life, someone said to me, "Do you believe in reincarnation?" And I was stunned. What? It was unreal to me. Because I knew what it meant, but I had never heard it until then, except for in the room of knowledge. So this angel told me, "Susie, it's time to go." And I walked over, or floated. And I have to tell you, I remember thinking in my head, this angel being was floating. And I wanted to float. And I remember thinking, I want to float. I hope I get to float. I don't know if I did or not. I was probably floating, but I don't remember that. But I have no doubt I was, because I don't remember walking either. But I just wanted to know I was floating. I wanted to float. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And let me tell you, the trees, they pulsate, they vibrate. And you can feel those roots going down into the earth. And so I feel like the trees there just came down into our earthly place. It was so amazing. Anyway, they told me that it was time to go. And I went to this, I don't know if it was a river or a lake or what it was. It felt like a river. And I started walking with them, or this being, down this riverbed. And I remember them telling me I was gonna go through the water to go home. And I thought they meant they were gonna clean me up because I'd been in a field. I thought they were gonna bathe me for my mommy. And, that's what I thought. And that's not what they were saying at all. What they were telling me was that we come through water, and water is precious to us. When you think about how you feel when you're taking a shower, when you're in water, when you're swimming, there's just some feeling you have of freedom. And we were birthed in water, but I didn't understand that then. I didn't know that. I remember her telling me that I was going to have a hard life. And I didn't like that, but I didn't know what it meant. I really didn't. And they said that, it's time to go in the water now. And I didn't think I wanted to go. And then I made the decision that I would, because I was going to see my mommy. Now, all this time, my mom was hearing, your baby's in the freezer. And she ignored it. And they say I was in the freezer from anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours. I'm sure it's somewhere in between. And they know that the boys left the garage. They went out and played for a while and then went home, so nobody really knows. But my mother decided that she needed to go check the freezer out in the garage. And she got outside and this is my recall of what she told me, that she saw the garage door closed, so she didn't think that I could possibly be in there. And so she was going to walk away, and then she felt that urge that we get when it comes to our children. And so she decided to see. And she knew I was too little to open up the garage door. So she opened the garage door, and she thought, this can't be. Susie couldn't have gotten in here. And she walked around our boat, because our boat was in there and we were blocked from all of that. And she opened up the freezer door, and my little body was in there, and I was facing inward. She told me that she spun me around, and I was ashen. Those were the words she used, with blue fingertips. I was ashen, which is like a gray tone. And she said that she panicked. There were no cell phones then. She started screaming, and she dropped me. She let go of me because she needed to run and get help. And I fell. I guess I can't tell you because I was not conscious, but I fell somehow, and I cracked open my chin. I still have my little scar, and the next thing I knew, I was taking a breath. Now, I needed to, get well. I needed to be healthy again. And so it took some time, but before I knew it, I was. And when I opened my eyes to be, in the world again, first of all, I was shocked and disoriented, but I also saw spirits. They were everywhere. They were looking in my window, under my bed, in the corner of the room, down the hallway. I could feel them everywhere. And I used to play with them during the day in this room called the creepy room. That's what my family called it. My brothers and sisters called it that. And because they heard me playing in there, and it was just the living room, but they called it the creepy room. And I would play with spirits in that room. I'd play the Beatles, and I'd be rocking out, and I'd be married to Paul, and they always got Ringo, and I got Paul. And they were my friends. And I was a different child. I was different. I saw spirits when I would play with people. And so I would tell people, your grandma wants to play. And they'd say, you're so mean. My grandma died. And I would, get beat up or whatever. And so I stopped talking about it. But mostly I didn't talk about it because my mother had this gift, and they had institutionalized her for several weeks and medicated her. And that's part of why she didn't believe her intuition when she heard your baby's in the freezer, because she was on Valium, which is what they gave people in those days. And I remember like not really recognizing that they were standing there, but I knew they were standing there in that room playing with me. And then when I would get scared because I couldn't see them, they'd go away for a while. And that's how I lived my life, was just talking to the spirit realm. I remember at night I was very afraid, and I would get up and I would stand at the edge of my doorway, and I would call my mom. I wouldn't even go potty. I was so afraid because I could see them and I didn't know who they were. And they never hurt me. There was nothing to be afraid of, but I didn't know that, as a little girl. So to me, they were the boogeyman coming to get me. And I almost felt like I was imagining these boogeymen, but I knew they were there, and they would talk to me. And I would hear mumbling. I didn't really hear them. I heard mumbling, but I could see them. Well, as time went on, I started to hear them. And they would say things to me like, in my abnormal normal life, they would say things like, I just died. Wake up, I just died. And this is my name. And you're going to hear I died. And I'm so-and-so brother's sister's best friend. And they think I did it on purpose, and I didn't. Please tell them. And that's a lot for a child to carry. I didn't know what to do with it. But as I got older, I understood, because I would get a call, or somebody would call my family the next day, or someone would tell me that so-and-so's brother, sister's best friend died. And I had their name right, and I had information about them that I couldn't possibly know. So I knew it was real. I went through my teen years with this ability, and I would be woken up all the time. I actually got a sleeping disorder because I literally couldn't sleep at night. And they always woke me, wake up, I just died. Crazy. And sometimes I was awake and they'd come and they'd tell me things. I remember I was about 18 or 19, and my Nana passed away, but I didn't know she died. And she came to me. I was wide awake, laying in my bed, and I was married. My husband was laying next to me, and I remember her talking to me, and it scared me. I didn't know it was my Nana, and I told her, go away, like I always did my whole life, covered my head with blankets and said, go away, go away. And she started to fade, and then it dawned on me who she was. I don't know how, I don't know why. It was familiar. I know that today, but at that time I didn't understand that. So our loved ones are familiar. We feel a familiarity of love that we don't feel with angels and guides. So that's how I tell the difference. So there I was, waiting for somebody to say something to me, and my Nana said, it's me. And I said, Nana? And she came in really strong. And she was in a rocking chair, and she was old. And I never saw old people, so it was kind of shocking. And she told me that, she was alone for years and years, and I think she meant without my papa. And she said that she's happy, and she wanted me to know that she had left the planet, but that she'd always be with me, and she was happy. And she told me some really, really neat stuff. And she turned into a ball of light. I know this sounds crazy, with spears off of it, and went into the corner of the room and dissipated into the wall. Now, since then, that's how I see them leave. And someone asked me on a podcast, why do they leave that way? And I said, I think it was efficient. That's the only thing I can think of. It's kind of like you wouldn't carry all your clothes going on a trip in your arms. You'd put it in a bag of luggage. That's efficient. And I think that's what they do. And then when I was in the spirit world, they would look like holograms. It was like 3D. And I don't know how else to describe that. But in our world, they don't come 3D for me. So I got up the next day, and I got a call that my Nana had died. And my parents called me, and I was devastated. And I had heard or read in the newspaper, actually, that UCLA Medical Center was doing work with mediums, but they called it ESP, extrasensory perception. And I was intrigued and I knew what that meant. And so I called them, and a man came on the line, and I told him my story. And I think he was just an intake person, but he said to me, it sounds like you're a medium. And I said, what's a medium? And he said, those are people who speak to the dead. And I hung up the phone, like, it went down quick, and I never spoke about it. I was horrified and I was scared, and I didn't know what that meant for me. So I became a grief and addiction counselor, and I knew things. I just knew things about people, like what kind of soul they were, or what happened to them when they were children, or who they lost in their names and what happened to them, and just evidential information that I couldn't possibly know. And I kept getting this information so clearly, probably even more clearly than I do now, just in different ways. And I remember they would tell a friend, because they say, I didn't tell you that. You know, maybe I'd say, I think this PTSD comes from trying to revive your grandma when she had her stroke. And they'd say, I didn't tell you that. And I'd backtrack because I didn't want to be locked up. And I'd say, I know you did. I know you did. And I was afraid they'd take my license or lock me up or something. And they'd say, no, I didn't. I didn't tell you that. I haven't told you that yet, but I knew it. And they'd tell their mom or their brother or their sister or their friends, and they started coming to me for mediumship. Now, I want you to understand that the spirit realm wants to talk to us. I am a grief specialist, and I have also had tremendous grief. Both my brothers and my mother left this planet by suicide. And it was a very, very difficult journey for me. It taught me how to help others. And so I take grief very seriously. I wanted to help others deal with the loss and to learn to connect and communicate with their loved ones. So in my book, I talk very in depth about my near-death experience. I talk about how to communicate, how to understand fear versus intuition, what it was like living among what I called the dead that weren't dead. And so it tells the story about the spirit world, the love, understanding yourself. And so it goes into much more depth than I can in this half hour. I want you to know that they are always there. So the major question I get all the time is, why can't I see the signs? If they're there, why aren't they giving me signs? And they are. So I have this little story I created called The Sloth, the Butterfly, and the Hummingbird, because I have my doctorate in divinity and I work with children who have near-death experiences. And so this helped them. And the sloth is very slow moving, maybe high vibration, and I love them, but they're slow moving. The butterfly is like a medium, or like these children that can see things. They vibrate higher, and the reason they can't see everything is because the hummingbird vibrates at a very high vibration and moves very quickly. So even a medium can't hear it all. I wish we could. And by the time the hummingbird comes, and that's the spirit world, that's your loved one, and by the time the sloth can turn and move, because it's so slow motion, that hummingbird is gone. It's gone to 60,000 places and it's gone. And grief is the lowest vibration. Grief and anger and hate are the lowest vibrations. So we vibrate when we're in grief at a very low energy. And they vibrate so high that you're the sloth missing the hummingbird. So that's why you're not seeing it, but it doesn't mean the hummingbird wasn't there. They are there. And learning how to connect with them takes getting through some of the grief, vibrating higher, Now, keep in mind that in your dreams, they can come easily and give you signs. And sometimes they can break through the low vibration, but it's just not as often. And so they are giving you signs and you are connecting with them. You're just not aware that you're in that connection. And that's the hard part, right? Is becoming aware that they are there. So that is my story of my mediumship and what I do. I'm a forensic medium. I try to help find missing people also. And I do that for free. But I want you to know that the spirit world is there. I saw it with what I call my own eyes. I don't think they were eyes, but I felt like they were. And I know they're there, and I know they're there for you. And all you have to do is put your limiting beliefs aside and trust the process. You can't be wrong. And what I mean by that is this. If you hear something in your head from your loved one and you say to yourself, thank you so much for that message, they then know, even if it wasn't then that time, that you're going to listen in that way. And so they're going to come to you in that way. So always remember that. If you say, I just think that's what they'd say, they go, oh, they're not going to listen in that way, so they don't come in that way. So give them every opportunity to show you they're there, because your loved ones love being around you and they love communicating with you. Think of it this way. Because they left this planet doesn't mean you don't love them anymore. And it certainly doesn't mean you don't want to be around them and communicate with them. They love too, and they feel the same way. So I hope this helped you in some way to understand the spirit world and to learn to connect in. And my book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, will teach you how to connect in with them. I do exercises to do that, to help you widen your expansion and to the spirit world. And I hope that you open up the pathways and allow your loved ones to speak to you, because they love you and they are there for you. I want you to remember that they are literally only a heartbeat away. If your heart stops, there they are. You all take care of you, and thank you for listening to my story. I had to leave so much out because 30 minutes isn't enough time, but it's all in my book. And I wish you so much peace and joy in your journey. Take care of you.